Hi there, I'm Jolene. At my sister's birthday, they sat me in the hallway, next to a coat rack. No name card at the main table, no photo, no voice in the room. I thought it was just a mistake. But then I saw Rachel in my seat, smiling like she belonged. And the others? They looked the other way. That night didn't just expose a seating chart. It exposed years of betrayal, money stolen behind my back, a letter my mother wrote before she died, hidden from me until it was almost too late. How did it get that far? And why did no one stop her? The first thing I noticed was the fountain. It sprayed upward in a glittering arc outside the entrance, catching the golden Arizona sunlight in a way that felt too perfect, like something you'd see in a luxury hotel ad. Not a place you show up to feeling like a question mark in your own family. I stepped out of my car, adjusting the neckline of my dress. Navy blue, modest but fitted, clean makeup, nude heels, polished enough to say I belonged, not flashy enough to steal attention. I'd practiced this. I was here to keep the peace, to wish Marjorie a happy birthday, to play my role. That's what I always did. Or used to do. Walking into the venue, the air-conditioned lobby hit me like a wall, crisp, scented with something floral and expensive. I saw the check-in table right away. A young woman in a peach blouse smiled brightly, almost too brightly, and chirped, "Hi there, name?" "Jolene Hart," I said, keeping my tone light. She paused, flipping the seating chart clipboard, her eyes scanning. Then that split-second hesitation. Her smile flickered. She pulled a place card from the stack and held it out, her voice dipping slightly. "You're at table 19. I glanced down. It said table 19 in a soft gold script. No fancy ink, no embellishment, just my name and that number. I looked behind her, toward the main ballroom. The double doors were open, revealing round tables, glowing centerpieces, flickering votives. My eyes darted, searching for table 19. She followed my gaze and hesitated again before gesturing, not toward the ballroom, but to the side hallway. "It's just out there, by the coat room." "Excuse me?" I asked, forcing a small laugh. "Is this a mistake?" She blinked, apologetic but firm. "That's your assigned seat." I stared at her for a beat, then down at the card. My hands suddenly felt clammy. I thanked her because I was still on autopilot, and turned toward the hallway. It smelled faintly like lemon cleaner and dust. A long rectangular table was tucked against the wall, a few chairs pushed in haphazardly. No linen, no centerpiece, no lighting. Just forgotten. I stood there blinking. It wasn't just exclusion, it was placement. This wasn't just about seating, it was a statement. A message wrapped in passive aggression. You don't matter enough to sit with us. Trying not to show how badly it stung, I straightened up and made my way toward the ballroom entrance, scanning the room. That's when I saw her. Marjorie, my sister, the birthday girl. She stood in a champagne-toned gown that probably cost more than my monthly rent, laughing with a group near the cake table. Her curls bounced as she tilted her head and smiled, always perfectly poised. And sitting right next to her? Rachel. I stopped mid-step. Rachel. The same woman who had cried to me 3 years ago about needing money to keep her apartment. The same woman I had loaned $2,000 to, who ghosted me after. And now she was sipping wine, nestled into the seat I had expected to take. It was all too coordinated. I walked slowly past them, trying not to draw attention, but Rachel spotted me and did a double take. Then she grinned. "Oh my God, Jolene, it's been ages," she said too loudly. I gave her a tight smile. "Yeah, it really has." Marjorie turned. Her eyes swept over me, then to my name card in hand. Her smile was serene, lips slightly parted like she was about to say something kind. But then came the smirk. Barely there, but I saw it. "Did they put you in the hallway?" she asked, voice dripping with innocent surprise. "That's odd. I'm sure it wasn't intentional." Intentional. The word landed in my chest like a hammer. I glanced around. My father was pouring himself a whiskey at the bar. My aunt and cousin were seated comfortably, laughing, not a care in the world. Every seat was filled, with people I grew up with, people I thought I meant something to. None of them looked surprised I wasn't seated with them. Marjorie leaned in a little closer, lowered her voice just enough. "It's just a dinner. Don't be dramatic." I froze. That phrase, "don't be dramatic," was the Hart family motto when anyone dared call out mistreatment. When someone finally cracked under the weight of years of silence, I met her gaze head on. She blinked first. And that's when I knew. She didn't expect me to come. Or worse, she did. And this was her way of making sure I knew exactly where I stood. Still, I tried to smile. Of course, just a dinner. She turned back to her circle, already dismissing me. I took a step back, then another. The hallway wasn't far. Neither was the exit. I walked past the photo booth, past the cake table, past the glossy laughter and the smell of over-buttered appetizers. I reached the hallway again, staring at the folding chair by the coat rack. For a second, I thought about sitting down, about taking the card, plastering on a grin, and pretending I didn't care. But then I realized I wasn't walking away from the dinner. I was walking away from pretending I still belonged. So I did. The hallway was quiet, too quiet for a celebration that loud. I stood there a moment longer, as if waiting for someone to realize the mistake. But no one came. So I left, only I didn't head home. Not yet. Instead, I circled the back garden, letting the soft glow from the patio lights follow me around the edge of the venue. The champagne buzz of laughter floated from the open doors. I found a shaded bench and sat, letting the stone beneath me ground my racing thoughts. 38 minutes, maybe 40, had passed since I arrived, and already I felt erased. A few deep breaths later, I decided I'd give it one more try. Not for them, but for me. I wasn't going to beg for a seat, but I wanted to see if anyone even noticed I was missing. I slipped back inside. The photographer had arrived. His camera strap swung as he directed everyone toward the open floor near the fireplace, where the light hit just right. I lingered near the edge of the crowd, not sure if I should approach. Then I heard someone say, "All right, let's get a big family shot," and my chest tightened. I stepped closer, expecting someone, anyone, to wave me over. They didn't. I made eye contact with my Aunt Patricia, who immediately turned to whisper something to her husband. A cousin, Nate, I think, saw me and offered a stiff shrug, mouthing something like, "They're just doing core family first. Maybe for the slideshow." Slideshow. The same one Marjorie had been planning for weeks, the one she'd asked everyone to send photos for. I had emailed her 6. She hadn't replied. I took another step back, quietly. The camera flashed. Marjorie stood front and center, arms looped around Rachel and Travis. My seat thief and my sister's boyfriend side by side, both grinning like they'd won something. And I wasn't even a footnote. I walked toward the nearest restroom to hide, even just for a few minutes. The lights inside were too bright, too sterile. I closed myself into a stall and finally pulled out my phone, just to distract my thoughts. Big mistake. The notifications were piling up. Likes, tags, messages. I opened Instagram, and there it was. Marjorie's latest post. "Grateful for every soul that made tonight magical # blessed # family first." The photo? The group shot. My family. My blood. Laughing, glowing, polished to perfection. Except, I wasn't in it. I scrolled back, zooming in. I remembered standing near the corner when the picture was taken. I was in the frame, but she'd cropped it, and she hadn't tagged me, not even a mention in the caption. One comment said, "You two are literal sisters' goals." Another, "That smile says everything. You're surrounded by real love." I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted copper. Real love? No. This was curated loyalty. A story where I didn't exist, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she'd done it intentionally. Suddenly, I was 12 again, at Grandpa's birthday. My cousins sat lined up for the family picture, and I'd arrived late from dance rehearsal. I remember running toward the group, still in my leotard, my hair frizzy with sweat. I stood at the edge of the frame, and later when the photo was printed, someone had used scissors to trim the border, cutting me out. My mother claimed it was to fit the frame. I believed her. Back then, I always did. Even as a child, I learned how to be invisible. That memory cracked open something deeper. A pattern I hadn't wanted to admit. I'd been erased before, not just from photos but from holidays, from phone calls, from memories people chose not to keep. This post wasn't just a picture. It was the digital version of that scissor. Sharp, deliberate, final. I stepped out of the stall and leaned over the sink, splashing cold water on my face. My reflection stared back, makeup still intact, eyes a little too bright. I dried my hands slowly, folded the towel, and dropped it in the bin. The party noise rolled through the hallway again, more laughter, more glass clinking. But for me, the party was over long before the first toast, and somehow being erased from a photo hurt more than being erased from a room. I didn't go back inside right away. Instead, I pushed open the side door that led out to the garden lounge. The scent of blooming jasmine drifted in the breeze, mixed with faint traces of vanilla candles from the buffet tables. It was quiet out there, calm, like a different world from the curated chaos inside. I needed air, not just oxygen, but space. Space from the digital slap I'd just taken, from the smiley captions and hollow hashtags, from the memory of being intentionally framed out of someone else's narrative. I stood by the edge of the fountain, scrolling through the comments on Marjorie's post again. Each word felt heavier the longer I read. Fake admiration, fabricated praise, performative sisterhood. And then one comment caught my eye. "You've always been the one looking out for her. You're the best big sis ever." I stared at it for a moment too long. Then, without thinking, I whispered aloud to no one but the air. "Yeah, just like last time." It wasn't meant to be said, but once it left my mouth, something inside me cracked open. 2 years ago. I hadn't thought about that morning in a long time. Probably because I didn't want to. Back then, I was job hunting hard after taking time off from corporate to help Dad through his heart surgery. I'd landed an interview at Zenith Financial, a major firm in downtown Phoenix. The kind of role that could have reset everything. Full salary, benefits, a clear track back into the game. The night before the interview, I was at Marjorie's for dinner. She poured us wine, asked about my outfit, my resume, even offered to steam my blouse so it didn't wrinkle in the car. She seemed helpful, too helpful. Before bed, I double-checked the interview location. Lincoln Tower, Suite 3204. That's what the email said. But the next morning, as I sat in my car ready to punch in the GPS, I got a text from her. "Marjorie, hey, just a heads up, don't go to Lincoln Tower. It's the Lincoln Corporate Building. They look identical. I got lost there once. Good luck. You'll crush it." I paused, checked the email again, but her confidence, her certainty, made me second-guess myself. I changed the destination and drove across town. By the time I realized the mistake, I was 25 minutes late. I called the front desk at Zenith, apologizing, trying to explain the confusion. But they'd already moved on. The recruiter wouldn't reschedule. I was devastated. When I told Marjorie, her response was a soft gasp and a half laugh. "Oh shoot, I must have mixed them up. I was sure it was the corporate building. But hey, everything happens for a reason, right? You'll bounce back." I told myself it was an honest mistake. She didn't mean it. Maybe she really was confused. Maybe she was just trying to help. But now, standing there in that garden, seeing how precisely she could manipulate a moment, a caption, a seating chart, it all clicked. That text wasn't sisterly concern. It was control, dressed up in emojis. She hadn't messed up. She redirected me, away from opportunity, away from power, away from anything that might have made me too equal, too threatening. And what made it worse? I believed her. I made myself small in order to keep the peace, the kind of peace that always came at my expense. My stomach churned, not just from the realization, but from the years I spent excusing it, rationalizing it, telling myself that if I was patient, if I was forgiving, if I didn't make waves, someday she'd see me the way she pretended to on Instagram. That day never came, and it wouldn't, because the truth is, Marjorie wasn't careless. She was calculated. She didn't misguide me by accident. She redirected my entire life on purpose. I re-entered the venue through the side entrance, brushing past a waiter who offered me a flute of champagne I didn't take. The music had shifted into something slower now, the kind of ambient jazz that filled in silences too awkward for conversation. I found a small bench near the back bar, partly shaded by a decorative ficus. It was tucked far enough into the corner that no one would notice me, not unless they were looking. and no one was. I was still scrolling through the comments under Marjorie's post when someone's shadow interrupted my screen. "Hey," Travis said. I looked up, startled. He had 2 drinks in hand, one of them held out to me. "I figured you might need this." I took the glass but didn't drink. He sat beside me, too close, too casual. "I've noticed it's been tense tonight," he said, drawing out the word like he wasn't sure it fit. "Between you and Marjorie." I kept my face neutral. "She told me things have been rough between you two," he went on. "Said you've been kind of distant lately, that she's tried to reach out." I laughed, short and dry. "She's good at making herself the victim," I replied, letting the bitterness show for the first time that night. He studied me for a second, then tilted his head. "I mean, do you think maybe you're just a little jealous? I don't mean that in a harsh way. It's just, that's how it sounded when she talks about you." There it was. That word, jealous. The catch-all defense mechanism for when someone dares to call out injustice in a family. The shield behind which manipulation gets to hide and flourish. I stared into my untouched drink, the fizz having already gone flat. "I used to believe she meant well," I said softly. "I don't anymore." He didn't answer right away, just shifted awkwardly in his seat. "I'm not saying you don't have your side," he added. "I just know Marjorie's been under a lot of pressure lately." I turned toward him, finally meeting his eyes. Pressure doesn't give you permission to rewrite someone else's life story. He blinked. I stood, set the drink down on the bar, and walked toward the main room, needing space again, but this time not to breathe. To remember. Across the room, Rachel was laughing with someone near the dessert table, her voice just loud enough to carry over the music. I froze. Rachel. I hadn't thought about her in months, not since she'd vanished. Flashback. A year ago my phone buzzed just after midnight. Rachel's name lit up my screen. She was crying, panicked, said she was 2 months behind on rent, couldn't make her car payment, and was scared she'd lose everything. I didn't even hesitate. I wired her $4,000 the next morning, from my emergency savings, money I'd planned to use for dental work, or to finally take that road trip up the coast. She promised to pay me back. She never did. Weeks passed, then silence. She stopped answering calls, stopped replying to messages. Now here she was, at Marjorie's party dressed in designer, sipping wine like nothing ever happened. I glanced back at Travis, who was now talking to Marjorie again, completely unaware. Of course he was. He only knew the version of me Marjorie curated, the edited one, the difficult one, the ungrateful sister. My chest tightened. It wasn't the money that hurt the most. It was realizing how replaceable I'd always been to the people I thought I was loyal to. I moved to the side of the room, leaned against the wall, eyes locked on the party around me, the performance, the curated narrative, and suddenly I wasn't just hurt, I was furious. At the lies, at the rewriting, at the way everyone seemed so comfortable building an entire version of me that suited their story better than the truth ever did. If I stayed silent again, if I kept swallowing my pride just to make others more comfortable, I'd disappear completely. I felt it, like a line in the sand had been drawn right beneath my heels, and for once, I wasn't stepping back. If no one else will speak the truth, then maybe it's time I did. The air inside had grown thicker, like it had absorbed the tension radiating off me. I drifted toward the courtyard doors, pretending I needed fresh air again, but really, I just needed space from their curated ignorance. As I sat on the stone bench tucked near the lavender hedge, a voice approached softly from behind. "Jolene?" I turned to find Wanda, our cousin on Mom's side, but more like Switzerland in this war of sisters. She always stayed out of family messes, until now. She looked nervous, her hands wrapped around a folded piece of silk. She sat beside me, smoothing the fabric in her lap like she wasn't sure what to say. "I've been holding on to something," she finally whispered. "Too long, probably, and maybe I shouldn't be giving it to you now, but I can't pretend I don't see what's happening anymore." I frowned. "What is it?" She unwrapped the silk carefully, revealing an envelope, the kind with a gold edge and soft paper, my grandmother's stationery. I would have recognized it anywhere. "She wrote this for you," Wanda said, right before she passed. Told me to give it to you only if things ever went too far. My hands trembled as I took it. I hesitated. A letter from the dead doesn't land lightly. But something in Wanda's face told me I needed to read it now, not later. I broke the seal. The handwriting was shaky, but familiar. My grandmother never minced words, and this letter was no exception. Jolene, it began. You've always seen Marjorie clearly. That's why she's always tried to blur your reflection. I stopped reading, already breathless. Wanda sat in silence beside me, letting the words work their way through me. It's not your fault, the letter continued. Some people only thrive when others are diminished, and you, my bright girl, never deserved to be made smaller so others could feel bigger. I felt something crack open in my chest. It wasn't pain, it was validation. Proof that I wasn't imagining the years of erasure, of being talked over, written out, moved aside. This letter was truth, left behind like a breadcrumb trail from someone who'd always known. I wiped my cheek before the tears had time to fall. You okay? Wanda asked softly. I nodded, but didn't speak. She took a deep breath, eyes on the envelope now resting in my lap. There's something else, she said. Of course there was. After Grandma passed, Wanda continued, I let Marjorie handle the inheritance. She said she'd combine both of your shares into one account, said she had a better financial advisor. It sounded logical at the time. I blinked slowly. You let her handle mine too? Wanda's eyes filled with something like shame. I trusted her. I thought she'd do the right thing. But after a few months, I never saw your name on the account again. I asked once. She told me not to worry, that you decided to pass your share to her voluntarily. I turned toward her, heat rising in my throat. Voluntarily? She nodded, eyes down. I didn't question it. I wanted to, but I was scared I'd make things worse. There it was again. Silence dressed up as peace. She stole from me, I said quietly, in broad daylight, and you all let her. Wanda didn't argue. She didn't defend. She just looked broken. I stood, sliding the letter back into its envelope. I wasn't going to scream. I didn't need to throw a drink or flip a table. All I needed to do was walk. So I did. I pushed the doors open and walked straight toward Marjorie. She stood near the fireplace, laughing with her circle, hand on Travis's arm like she was center stage. I stepped close enough that only she could hear me, but loud enough that everyone would notice I was speaking. If you ever try to erase me again, I said, my voice low but steady, I'll make sure everyone sees exactly who you are. She blinked, didn't speak, and for the first time in a long time, I knew she understood I wasn't bluffing. She blinked, but didn't speak, because she knew I meant it this time. By the time I stepped back into the room, something had shifted. The lighting hadn't changed, the music was still going, and glasses still clinked, but the energy, the undercurrent, was different, looser, louder, like people had finally surrendered to the night. Laughter rang sharper, more frequent, and champagne had clearly done its job. But beneath the surface, something else had begun to creep in, something heavier. Not everyone felt it yet, but I could see it in a few faces. The ones not caught in the buzz. A furrowed brow here, a side glance there. Whatever tension had been mine alone earlier, it had started to spread. I cut through the room quietly, angling toward the back bar where I could grab some water and disappear into a shadowed corner until I figured out what to do next. I wasn't ready for a confrontation. Not yet. I just needed a moment. But that's when I saw him. Travis stood a little away from the others, half shielded behind one of the floral arrangements near the bar. His posture was stiff, head tilted down toward the phone in his hand. The expression on his face didn't match the rest of the room. Tense, confused, like he was trying to solve a puzzle that made no sense. Definitely not the look of someone basking in his engagement party. When he saw me, his eyes lingered for a beat. Then he lifted his hand in a hesitant wave. An invitation. Hey, he said as I got close. His voice was low. Can I talk to you for a second? I nodded, not trusting myself to say anything yet. He looked around to make sure no one was paying attention, then turned the screen of his phone toward me. I wasn't snooping, he said quickly. I was trying to show her this dumb meme, and this was open. On the screen, a series of text messages lit up in a familiar thread. Marjorie's thread. Still open, still active. Probably from earlier in the day. She must have forgotten to close it. I didn't need to scroll. Just one message, sitting right there in the middle of the screen, told me enough. She's a leech, always has been. She shows up just to cling to the edges of my spotlight. My name wasn't in it. Didn't have to be. We both knew who it was about. My stomach didn't drop out from under me. Not in surprise, anyway. It was more like confirmation, like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. I didn't flinch, didn't even look away. Travis did. I didn't know she talked about you like that, he said, voice quieter now. She talks about everyone like that, I replied. My tone was even, almost tired. You're just next. He blinked, taken aback. I thought you two were just competitive. I nearly laughed. It came out more like an exhale. No, Travis, she competes. I've just been surviving. He looked like he wanted to say more, maybe offer some defense or apology. I cut him off with a small shake of my head. You're not the reason she's like this, but you let her stay that way. That's on you. His lips parted, but he didn't argue. Before either of us could say another word, Wanda appeared beside me. I hadn't even seen her coming. She wasn't holding a drink this time. Her hands were full of paper, some printed, others folded, some clipped together with color-coded tabs. She looked calm, serious. I found these, she said, just loud enough for us to hear, in Grandma's filing cabinet. I didn't know what they were at first, but she handed them to me without fanfare. I flipped through the top few sheets. At first, it looked like normal financial paperwork, emails, transfer records, annotations in the margins. But then I saw the subject lines. One stopped me cold. Nonprofit allocation for birthday event. I froze. I read it again. Then again. This party, this entire event, from the champagne to the venue to the damn flower walls, had been categorized under our grandmother's charitable foundation. Listed as a nonprofit expenditure. This wasn't just unethical, it was fraud, straight-up theft. I looked up from the papers, heart pounding but face calm. My gaze moved across the room until I found her, Marjorie, still glowing in the middle of the crowd, head thrown back in a picture-perfect laugh, still holding court like nothing could touch her. But something had cracked now, and I wasn't going to whisper anymore. I moved toward the center of the room, each step slow and deliberate. As I neared the DJ booth, he instinctively turned down the music. Maybe out of habit, maybe sensing something in my expression. I turned to face the crowd, papers still in hand. Excuse me, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried, firm, clear. Conversations stalled. Heads turned. Even Marjorie, from across the room, looked up, eyebrows raised. This party you're all enjoying? I said, scanning the room. It wasn't a gift. It wasn't a family celebration. It was a scheme, funded by a fake charity submission under my grandmother's name. A ripple moved through the crowd. Small gasps, quick glances, frozen expressions. I held up the papers. Every catered bite, every glass of champagne, paid for by money that was supposed to go to actual nonprofit work. She filed this event under a fraudulent foundation expense. Someone near the bar whispered, "Is she serious?" "Yes," Travis said, loud enough to be heard. "She is." I looked over. He didn't waver. Wanda stepped beside me. Her voice was calm, steady. She used the trust. Grandma's foundation. Without permission. This party isn't just tacky, it's criminal. Marjorie moved toward us now, her face pale. She looked like she was about to say something, but nothing came out. Her mouth opened, then closed again. Her silence was louder than anything she could have shouted. The room changed. Not in chaos, not in volume. It was subtler than that, like when the air pressure drops before a storm. One person set their drink down and walked away. Another turned from Marjorie and stepped back, slow and deliberate. Her circle, her carefully curated audience, began to thin. First one, then three, then more. People who had just been laughing with her were now avoiding her eyes. She stood there, lips trembling, frozen in place as the truth settled around her like dust. And this time there was no spotlight to cling to. Wanda's hands trembled slightly as she stepped forward, holding a stack of papers like a shield. Her voice cracked once but didn't waver. She didn't just misfile a party, she said, raising her voice slightly over the growing murmur. Marjorie created a fake nonprofit and routed the trust through it. This entire event is misappropriated. It's not just dishonest, it's criminal. The room rippled with sound. A cousin from Dad's side, Brian, the one who always cited law textbooks like scripture, spoke up without moving from his seat. That's misappropriation, and possibly tax fraud. A stunned pause, then a few audible gasps. Marjorie's face turned ghost pale. For a woman who lived on optics, cracks were beginning to show. No, she finally managed, eyes wide, voice shaky. That's not what happened. I didn't do anything illegal. Wanda held up the printed email chain. Then explain why your name is on the tax forms. Explain the EIN number that matches a shell charity registered 3 weeks before the party. A sharp inhale cut through the noise, then another. The energy of the room twisted into something raw, disbelief colliding with amusement, a scandal wrapped in sequins. That's when Marjorie snapped. Her mask didn't just crack, it shattered. Oh, give me a break, she shouted. You all love a little drama, don't you? People flinched at the suddenness. You think you're better than me, Jolene? You're not. You're a leftover, a walking sob story. Her voice climbed. Guests stepped back, eyes wide, hands on phones. Then it happened. She hurled her champagne glass. It missed me by inches, exploding against the floor. Glass and sticky fizz sprayed toward the buffet table. No one moved. Except one guest. A younger woman near the dessert station who held her phone up, already recording. Another voice came from the edge of the room. You might want to stop talking. This is live on Instagram. But Marjorie didn't stop. She kept going. Her words slurred, not from alcohol, but from rage left to ferment too long. She's a parasite, she said. Always has been. She clings to the edges, waiting for someone else to make her interesting. She feeds off pity. She needs to be the victim. That's all she has. Her voice was shrill now. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I didn't say a single word. I didn't have to. Because 5 seconds later, someone pulled up the clip, and by the 10-second mark, it was already posted. The comment section exploded. This is next-level narcissism. She's unraveling, and the camera caught every second. The sister's just standing there like a statue. Queen energy. Marjorie caught sight of the post on someone's phone and lunged, trying to grab it. Don't film me, she shrieked. This is private. But nothing about this night was private anymore. Travis walked past me without saying a word. He slipped the expensive watch she'd bought him off his wrist and set it on the table beside the guest book. That tiny motion was louder than any goodbye. The music still played softly in the background, like a cruel joke. No one laughed now. No one raised a glass. They just watched as the center of the party unraveled in real time, and through it all, I stood still. Not because I couldn't speak, but because I didn't need to. The evidence was everywhere now. And for the first time in her life, Marjorie stood in a room full of people and felt completely alone. I didn't look back. Not when I passed the gift table, cluttered with unopened wine bottles, rumpled tissue paper spilling from glossy bags. Not when I walked by the untouched cake, flawless still, save for a single missing slice, like it was waiting for something that never came. Not even when I heard Travis say my name, softly, almost apologetically, like he didn't know whether he still had the right to. There was nothing left for me in that room. The weight I'd carried for years, every buried feeling, every forced smile, every moment I'd bitten my tongue just to keep the peace, was gone. Not like a balloon drifting away. Not soft. More like a stone being dislodged from my chest. A boulder shoved off the cliff's edge. Nothing left to hold it up. Nothing left to hold me back. I pushed open the double doors and stepped into the night. The Arizona air was cool, crisp in that dry desert way, brushing against my skin like a reset. Above me, the sky stretched wide, dark and clear, scattered with stars that glittered indifferently. They didn't care about family drama or ruined parties. They'd been here before us, and they'd be here long after. It made everything feel smaller, lighter, right. I was halfway to my car when I heard footsteps behind me, quick, hesitant. Jolene. I stopped and turned. Wanda stood under the venue's awning, a small bundle in her hands wrapped in a deep burgundy napkin. Her posture was stiff, uncertain, like she'd made a last-minute decision she wasn't sure she'd stick to. "I wasn't going to say anything," she said, voice low. "But after tonight, after what you did, I think you deserve this." She stepped forward and held it out to me. I took it, confused but quiet. She didn't explain, didn't give me the chance to ask questions. She just gave me a small nod, turned around, and disappeared back through the doors without another word. The bundle felt light, soft. Inside the napkin was an envelope, aged, worn at the corners, the paper yellowed from time and maybe guilt. My name was written across the front in handwriting I hadn't seen in years. My mother's. My breath caught. For a long moment, I just stood there under the stars, envelope in hand, everything else suspended. When I finally sat in the driver's seat, I didn't start the car. I didn't even reach for the ignition. The interior light cast a faint glow, quiet and warm, like it knew this was a moment meant for stillness. I unwrapped the napkin and turned the envelope over in my hands. The seal had already been broken. Wanda must have read it, or at least opened it. Maybe she'd wrestled with the decision to give it to me, afraid of what it might stir up. Maybe she'd held on to it for years, waiting for the right moment. I opened it slowly. The letter was short, 1 page. My name at the top, written with the same care I remembered from childhood. Labels on lunch bags, permission slips, birthday cards. "Jolene, I know you probably won't understand why I waited this long. Maybe I don't even understand it myself. But if you're reading this, it means Wanda did the brave thing and gave it to you. I want to tell you something I never had the courage to say out loud. I loved both of my daughters, but I failed you in different ways." I stopped reading, just stopped. My breath came shallow, my heart suddenly loud again, pounding against my ribs like it wanted out. "You weren't hard to love. You were easy to overlook, and that was my failure, not yours. I let Marjorie perform. I let her narrate our lives, and I let you shrink. You deserved better, not because you earned it, but because love should never be earned in the first place." My eyes blurred. The words swam. I tried to blink the tears away, but they came faster than I could stop them. A few slipped down my cheek and landed on the page, the ink bleeding slightly where the salt water touched it. But I let it happen. I wasn't crying from heartbreak anymore. This grief was something different, something sharper, but cleaner, like alcohol on an open wound. Burning, yes, but also healing. It hurt, but it clarified. I folded the letter slowly, carefully, and tucked it into my bag. I wasn't going to reread it every day. I didn't need to. Just knowing it existed was enough. Just knowing she'd written it, that she had seen me, even if too late, meant something. I started the engine, but didn't drive. I sat there, breathing, thinking, not about the party I'd just walked away from, or the shocked faces, or the text messages that would be flying by now. Not even about Marjorie, standing alone in the center of the wreckage she built. What mattered was this moment, the quiet inside the car, the silence that finally felt earned, not awkward or heavy, but honest. There was a voice in my head, not loud, not demanding, just present, and it wasn't asking, "What now?" It was saying, finally I wasn't contorting myself to fit into someone else's version of the story. I wasn't reaching out for scraps of approval or chasing after the hope that someone might one day see me. My phone buzzed once on the passenger seat. A message from Travis. "I'm sorry." I stared at the screen for a long time. No anger, no ache, no righteous triumph, just peace. I powered off the phone and set it aside. And in that quiet space, something unexpected took root. Something soft but strong. Something that felt like freedom. Not just freedom from Marjorie. Freedom from the roles she cast me in. From the scripts I never agreed to. From the shadows I never belonged in to begin with. I wasn't anyone's backdrop anymore. This wasn't an escape. It was a reclamation. It had been a week. 7 days since I stepped out of that banquet hall and into a version of my life that didn't revolve around being tolerated. 7 mornings where I didn't wake up replaying conversations in my head, trying to twist myself into someone more likable, more palatable, more invisible. In those 7 days, the world hadn't stopped, but Marjorie's had cracked wide open. The video went viral by morning. A cousin with a decent TikTok following had posted it with the caption, "Family drama gone corporate." Last I checked, it had over 800,000 views and counting. The comments were relentless. Some cruel, some vindicating, all of them honest. By Wednesday, one of the nonprofits Marjorie used to volunteer for had issued a public statement. "We are terminating all association due to clear ethical violations." The email made its way to my inbox via someone I barely remembered from high school who now worked in PR. They wrote, "I thought you'd appreciate seeing this." Travis moved out of their shared apartment the next day. Wanda mentioned it over the phone, carefully, like she wasn't sure if I'd want to hear. I didn't ask for details. By Friday, Marjorie's Instagram was gone. Just gone. No public apology, no explanation. Just the digital equivalent of a house with the lights off and curtains drawn. And me? I was still here. Still quiet, but not silent. That Friday evening, I sat in my apartment, barefoot on the hardwood, folding laundry while an old Billie Holiday record played in the background. It was domestic, peaceful, unremarkable, and that felt revolutionary. My phone buzzed, a voicemail. I played it on speaker, letting it echo through the room. "Jolene, it's Travis. I just want to say I'm sorry for believing what she said, for not asking more questions. You didn't deserve any of it. I see that now. I hope you're okay, I really do." I didn't save it. I didn't delete it either. Instead, I reached into my drawer and pulled out the letter. My mother's letter. I'd read it every night since Wanda gave it to me. Not out of obsession, but because every line seemed to light a part of me I didn't know had dimmed. That night, I framed it. Hung it above my writing desk, just below the window where the sunlight hit around noon. The next morning, I opened a new bank account. Just in my name. I put in exactly $47,200. That was how much Wanda estimated had been diverted from my inheritance. The money wasn't from a lawsuit or a returned check. It came from me, months of side gigs, freelance copywriting, and the emergency fund I rebuilt brick by brick after Marjorie had bulldozed it. Then I wrote a check. Same amount. Made out to Sunridge Women's Resource Center. No return address, no name. Just one line in the memo, "You deserve better." I mailed it from the blue box down the block, then stopped for a croissant on the way home. I ate it while sitting in the park, watching strangers laugh like they didn't know the world could collapse over birthday cake and passive aggression. A little boy dropped his balloon. I caught it just before it floated too high. His mother smiled, reaching out for it. "Thanks," she said. "That was sweet of you." I nodded. "Sometimes you just need someone to see you." She tilted her head, maybe sensing more in my tone than I meant to reveal, then turned back to her kid. And I walked on. Past the park, past the bakery, past the quiet stretch of houses where porch lights flickered on at dusk, not toward anything dramatic. Just forward. I used to fight for a seat at their table. Now I'm building my own. Looking back, I don't regret walking away. Not because it was easy, but because, for the first time, I chose myself without asking for permission. If there's anything I've learned, it's this. Sometimes the people who claim to love you the loudest are the very ones who silence you the most. And family? It isn't about blood. It's about truth, safety, and being seen for who you are without needing to shrink to fit their version of you. To anyone watching this who's ever felt like the outsider in their own story, know this. You don't need to fight for scraps of respect from those who benefit from your silence. You're allowed to take up space. You're allowed to walk away. And you are never too old, too late, or too broken to rewrite your role in the story. Now I'm curious. Have you ever been made to feel small by someone who was supposed to protect you? What did you do? Let me know in the comments. If this story spoke to you, even just a little, drop a 1 in the chat or tell me where you're watching from. And if you didn't like it, tell me why. Your perspective matters too. And hey, if you want more stories like this, real, raw, and honest, hit that subscribe button and be the first to hear the next one.